after me. I'm a man. I'm 40.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Moving the Goalposts. I'm Nick DiMartino.
I'm Liam Barwick.
All right, so we have a lot to get into. First, of course, we have to do okay, so you can follow us on social media at our show at MTGP ETB on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DMart. You can follow Liam on Twitter at LiamMTGP. And you can follow this show, this network on social media at ATB Network on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And you can follow us you can follow the show, you can follow Empty the Bench Network on YouTube, youtube.com/ETB Network. You can find our podcast or any other Empty the Bench podcast on etbpodcast.com. And you can listen to us, you can listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure to like and subscribe. And of course, we are presented by the show is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for a Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. Okay, so that's everything. You can catch us at 8 o'clock every Friday. So first, we do need to talk about the Final Four. We do need to talk about the Final Four a little bit. So it was a pretty big weekend, I would say. The results are kind of what we expected them to be. NC State and Alabama not making it as the sort of underdogs. Zach Edey having a really big championship game, but nobody else actually doing anything. The UConn-Alabama game was actually somewhat fascinating to me because it looked like Alabama actually had a shot in the first half, even though Mark Sears on Alabama actually was pretty bad the first half. But, in typical UConn fashion, UConn was just able to win by an extraordinarily large margin, even after starting off kind of slow. I don't know. I mean, more than anything, I'm just very impressed by what Dan Hurley's been able to do in the past 2 years.
Yeah, well, the first thing that I would say is, yeah, I agree. This is like when you think about Florida, it was the last team to go back-to-back. They returned all 5 of their starters. UConn did not. In fact, UConn lost 5 of their top 8 players. And also, I don't think that a team, and I, could be wrong, and you probably have to go back to UCLA days, which is, a completely different dynasty because there was only 8 teams making the tournament at the time, whatever. But I don't think that team is, not only did they go back-to-back, they went back-to-back. They won every single game by at least 13 points. That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable. It's unprecedented. And I think now
You mean every single tournament game, right?
Every single tournament game, yeah.
Okay.
In both years. And it's unprecedented. And I agree. I'm stunned at the job he's done. And UConn, I thought that the two Final Four games that UConn played were the exact same, which was the first half. It looked like Alabama had a chance, and it looked like Purdue had a chance, and then they just did not. UConn just had the ability to take over games no matter what. I thought Alabama played a terrific game on Saturday. I thought they played terrific. They lost the game by 15 points. Alabama would go on 8-0 runs, and it wouldn't matter because UConn would just come back with an 8-0, 9-0 run. It's unprecedented what's happened. And again, you have to look at the margin of victory. I mean, not only are you going back to back, you're never even uncomfortable. I mean, even when it got close, I'm sure I think you may have felt the same way. Even when it got close, at least on Saturday and to an extent on Monday, I never thought that even when it was tied late or it tied in the second half, I never thought Alabama was going to win the game ever. I never thought Purdue was going to win the game ever.
Yeah, I didn't think Alabama was. I didn't expect Alabama to win. Even when Alabama was playing well, I think I kind of knew in the back of my head that Alabama wasn't going to be able to pull this off, just because UConn was too good. I don't know what it is. It's more the fact that I think, like I said last week, they have a very deep team, and they tend to. I think UConn is also just a really good team schematically, more than anything. I think it's just sort of a system that is set up that makes them so good. Like a lot of football teams, they might not necessarily have the best players, but they're set up to be a very good team. I think it's the same thing with UConn. I don't think they don't have a Zach Edey any sort of or star players that other teams often have. I think they just play great as a team, and also they have better depth than most teams do. And another thing I think they're good at is exploiting the weaknesses of other teams, but better than most teams. I think that they were certainly able to do that against Purdue. And I think they just know how to play other teams is really just how is, I think, a really big part of it, which I think very often is an issue for college basketball teams, which is that they don't know how to strategize or how to play to other teams' weaknesses, which I think is very often a problem for a lot of college teams. And I think UConn has been masterful at being able to do that. I don't know how much of the national championship game you watched, but the crazy thing is that, I mean, UConn, Zach Edey put up 37 points. That means he scored 60% of all the points that Purdue ever scored. He was amazing, incredible. But it was Zach Edey and everybody else. Zach Edey and like the bench is basically what it was. It was Zach Edey and everybody else was just the bench. That's basically what it seemed like. It was as if like UConn, it seemed like UConn just completely forced Purdue to be Zach Edey dominant, and they forced him to have a really big night, but nobody else to do anything at all. It was essentially like it was one man playing, and everybody else, frankly, on Purdue was terrible that night. Everybody else that was supposed to do anything at all was actually, I would say, was actually like really bad, except Edey, who ended up putting up 37 points. And it seemed like he had to do everything. It reminded me a little bit of when LeBron was playing against the Warriors in the finals that one year when Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love got hurt, and he just put up insane numbers. But they really didn't have a shot at winning because it was just LeBron. That's what it seemed like here. It was just all Zach Edey and nobody else. I mean, some of their other players, like so much of that team actually scored 0 points. They're like Braden Smith was this next highest scorer, and he put up 12 points, and he was actually he was terrible that game. So it just based on how everything went down, Purdue really just, it seemed like, didn't have a chance.
Yeah, I agree. And I think obviously UConn was completely fine with Zach Edey scoring 40 points because like you said, nobody else was really able to score a lot. I mean, again, I just think UConn is just that good of a team. I mean, it really was close right at the end of the half, and they actually ended up covering the first half spread, which was big. And it looked like you were going to be in the spread for a while, and they covered. They covered every spread in the 2 years, by the way, that they've won. And yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, by the way, if you had Alabama minus 11 or Alabama plus 11.5, you have to be sick. I mean, the game was tied in the second half.
Yeah.
There was no. Like we said, Alabama. Alabama, we didn't think they were going to win, but if you bet Alabama, you probably thought that you were safe with the cover for 99% of the game.
Yeah, or at least that the cover would more likely than not hit. I would say I never really felt. I don't think you should ever feel safe when it comes to a cover against UConn.
Right.
That wouldn't really make a whole lot of. That wouldn't be too smart. Wouldn't be too wise.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's definitely true. Also, I mean, Purdue they went 1 for 7 from 3. They only shot like 7 threes, and their percentages were just horrible, which goes to show you that like how good UConn's defense had to have been.
Right.
And
Right.
also, if you look at how dominant Zach Edey was, he had literally 0 assists. That's how useless his teammates were.
Yeah. Yeah. He was not he was not helped out. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing else you can really say besides that UConn has just been dominant. Danny Hurley has been amazing. And yeah, I mean, that's about it. I mean, they were just dominant at every position. They have a bench like we talked about last week. They have depth, which is something that's hard to find in college basketball. Unbelievable job and just amazing run. I mean, I again, I don't think that we've seen this dominant run, at least in the men's side of things.
Yeah. But I do have a question. So people are talking about this. Who's more likely to three-peat, UConn or the Chiefs?
I would probably say UConn.
You think so?
Yeah.
I'm going to go. I actually think the Chiefs are more likely to three-peat. I think the Chiefs with Mahomes and Andy Reid, I think that I see it more with them. Also, I think in college basketball, I think it's probably just harder. I think it'll honestly just be harder for UConn to three-peat. I mean, it's hard enough to repeat, let alone three-peat. And in college basketball, you never know. Like if they have, like if some other team gets a couple really good players, I don't see UConn's dominance lasting this long, especially because we don't know how long Danny Hurley's going to stay. Whereas the Chiefs are going to be dominant as long as Patrick Mahomes is healthy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, look, I could see either argument, but UConn, I mean, I don't know. Look, UConn's run has been pretty amazing. There's obviously no doubt that they're a blue blood. I don't know. Did you think that they were a blue blood before?
No, not in men's, but I think that now there is no. I mean, they've won. Kentucky's won one. Kentucky's won one.
Yeah.
Since they won 3, they beat Kentucky in a final.
Yeah.
I mean, do you consider Villanova a blue blood?
Yes.
So if you consider Villanova, then you have to consider UConn.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
The only argument that would be against UConn is that they really were irrelevant until the 90s. But here's what's amazing about UConn's run. They've won it with 3 different coaches. Jim Calhoun, Kevin Ollie, and now two with Danny Hurley. I mean, that's also pretty unprecedented in college basketball for different coaches to come and win a national title. I mean, most teams that you see that have a lot of national titles, a lot of them are under the same coach.
Yeah, or sometimes the only reason a team is even considered a blue blood is because of a run with one head coach.
Duke, Kentucky. Now Kentucky did it.
No, Kentucky did it with Pitino also, and Tubby Smith.
Yeah, but but they started with one guy, right? So they started with Adolph Rupp, made the program,
Yeah.
and then went on. Jim Calhoun made UConn. Yeah, they have to be considered a blue blood. I don't think that anybody's touches them in terms of success basketball, men's and women's, and the fact that you could get people to play basketball and go, you've got players like Rip Hamilton and Kemba Walker to go to Storrs, Connecticut, is amazing in its own right. So, they're essentially a blue blood. I just think that the NFL, it's very, I don't know. It's the NFL. The talent gap is a lot smaller than in college sports.
Yeah, obviously. But the
And I
thing
mean,
is,
think of all the things that the Chiefs. So the Chiefs had to grind out a game against the Eagles in the Super Bowl last year. They had to, or I guess whatever you want to consider it. And then this year they had to go on the road, win those games on the road, win a game in the coldest game ever, and then go to overtime, get kind of lucky in considerable situations. I mean, think of all that it took for the Chiefs to win 2 titles versus you could say, not that it didn't take a lot, because it does to win a title, but UConn was never felt tested at all, ever.
yeah, no, that part is true. I think the only difference is that we know going in next year, the Chiefs are going to be at least one of the Super Bowl favorites, if not, if you look at the odds, possibly the top Super Bowl favorite. Whereas every year in college basketball, we don't really know how each season is going to go. Whereas I think that, I mean, like we do kind of, I think that it's easier to predict how next season goes for the Chiefs outside of injuries, especially considering the fact that they're in the weaker conference, whereas UConn is, I think and this is not just true of UConn, I just think in general in college basketball, it's just so different. I think every season is very often a wild card in college basketball, and we don't know how everything is going to go. Like, I don't know how many players UConn is losing, but I think that the point I'm making is that, like, just the fact that UConn was able to be at the top for 2 years in a row, it just goes to show you how amazing Danny Hurley was and how great of a job that they did.
Right. Well, also, I mean, we have to consider something very significant, though.
Yeah.
Which is that, yes, they lost a lot of guys, and Florida, like we said, Florida returned 5 starters, but losing guys in college sports is far less significant than it ever has been because of transfer portals. Losing guys, you don't have to. So when you would lose guys back then, you'd have to bring in a lot of freshman recruits, guys that you had to develop. Now you could get guys who are developed, well-versed players in college basketball, experienced players at the drop of a hat.
Yes. Although there still is a very big, I agree with everything you just said. It's far less significant than it used to be. However, it is still far, if you're just going to compare Florida versus UConn, they're
Well, those are the last 2.
Right, the last 2 repeats. It is still far easier to have the same roster of a team that you just won a championship with,
of course,
than it is to not. But and also, Florida had much better play. I mean, Florida had more star players than
and I'll tell you what the evidence of that is that Billy Donovan has not been successful post those years.
No, he hasn't. I mean, which makes it feel sort of strange. He's actually, I mean, look, you gotta hand it to him because he was still able to win 2 in a row, which is not always easy. And by the way, you can say star players. I mean, if he got star players, that's kind of on him.
Of course.
But he did like, if you're a head coach, you're also the GM, so you build that team, and he built that team.
Right.
Although he hasn't been all that successful of an NBA head coach, he might
That's
end
what
up
I'm
going.
saying.
He might end up going back to college. Although it seems like every good college coach is not good in the NBA. It seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could make the same comparison in the NFL too. But yeah, again, just amazing job by
Yeah,
UConn.
yeah,
Yeah.
and of course, the other big story. Speaking of college basketball coaches, is that Coach John Calipari, just got up and it's just getting up and leaving Kentucky, supposedly going to Arkansas. Although I don't know if that's a done deal or not.
Yeah, that is true, but I that is the truth though. He's going to Arkansas, but I don't think that he got up and left. I think that he was probably forced out.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, you look. By the way, Kentucky fans are like some of the stupidest dumbest fan base. I mean, if you looked at Kentucky Twitter or like Kentucky fan accounts, um, I think that they were so anti John Calipari after they lost to Oakland. Like there were so many people calling for his head, and then he left, and the same people were like calling him a snake and stuff. Well, just a few weeks ago, you wanted him to leave, and now
Yeah.
you're complaining that he left. But I do think that he was forced out. I mean, I think that there was a lot of mounting pressure at Kentucky, and I think that the writing was on the wall at some point, and I think that losing to Oakland was a final nail in the coffin there. Yeah, I think that he was. I don't see this as being him really getting up and leaving, because why would you get up and leave and go to Arkansas? I mean, Arkansas has been more successful than Kentucky in a couple of recent years, but I still don't see it as the big move. I mean, you have to realize this guy's at Kentucky. Eric Musselman left. Eric Musselman left Arkansas to go to USC, and USC's coach, and USC, even though they seem like a big brand, their coach left to go to SMU. So, I mean, I don't know why anyone would leave Kentucky to go to Arkansas unless they really didn't have that choice.
I don't know if he was forced out or not, though I do think that's a reasonable possibility. I think what probably is more likely to have happened is that there was politics involved and there might have been some type of fight or power struggle. That doesn't mean he definitely wasn't fired or forced out, as they might say. The only thing that makes me suspicious about him getting actually fired in this scenario is that it doesn't actually sound like something that would happen. Like usually, even though he had a few really bad years in the tournament, I just now look, I don't know this for a fact, but I didn't see at any point Kentucky forcing him out. I still think that they want him to be their head coach. I think if anything, it might have been a power struggle or some type of fight that went on about, like, maybe he felt too controlled or something like that by somebody who was higher up, or somebody was saying, hey, the way you're doing this isn't working. And it led to him wanting to leave. I think that sounds to me like more likely, because I feel like if he was actually fired, we might know about it pretty soon or pretty quickly after. Because the thing with college basketball coaches is that when they're this good as Calipari is, they're very rarely ever fired. Although right now I think it might be a little different because there are a lot of good coaches that could be available. I just thought it was strange that he would go to a job that is just a far worse.
Yeah, but a lot of guys in that situation aren't fired, and they are fired.
Right.
Bill Belichick was fired by the Patriots.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
Okay?
he was fired.
Tom Coughlin was fired by the Giants. Okay, so it's a lot of stuff like that. But also, like, you have to realize, if that's true, what you're saying, which I think it could be, that there was some people that didn't like him in the in the higher ups or whatever at Kentucky, winning cures everything. So if there was a fight and stuff, the fact that he's losing in the first round to Oakland doesn't do him any favors in the slightest.
Right.
So that adds to it. But yeah, I just again like this is not. I understand that Arkansas has been more successful, but you know there are big names in college basketball. Not everything is. College basketball is different in terms of brands. For instance, Shaka Smart was the coach of Texas. He left for Marquette. I mean, that would never happen in other college sports. And one of the names that you would never leave is Kentucky. And so, I don't see this as something where he's been forced out. Now, there's also rumors which we just talked about, that Danny Hurley would go there. I would not understand that at all. Why would you leave somewhere you've just won 2 national titles at? And you've been very successful. I mean, Danny Hurley, you have to realize, hasn't really left in a 100-mile radius. He coached at Wagner, then he coached at Rhode Island, and then he coached at Staten Island, and then he coached at UConn. So and he's from Jersey, so he hasn't even left a 100-mile radius. And it's not. I think now, even though we just talked about how big a brand Kentucky is, UConn, I think you're going to have as easy a time recruiting and bringing in transfers at UConn as you would at Kentucky, because now it's when you're prominently featured in the Final Four and the national championship and stuff, that's extremely helpful to the brand.
Right. I think it's a lot closer. I think that UConn and Kentucky are closer than they used to be. I would not be surprised if Danny Hurley were to leave and go to Kentucky. It would make perfect sense, actually. The reason is simply because Kentucky would probably pay him more money. Kentucky's probably a better job. And I do think, all else being equal, Kentucky...
I don't know how you could say a job's a better job when he's just won 2 national titles in a row. But yeah.
Well, no, I think Kentucky's a better job. Like, I'm saying Kentucky's a better job than UConn. Is that even like, yeah, he just won, but you have to remember, coaches leave after winning all the time.
So if when Saban Saban left, if they called up Kirby Smart and said, "Oh, come to Alabama," would you say that Alabama is a better job than Georgia?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
You don't think that? Wait, you make it sound like that's such a crazy thing to say. You don't think Alabama's a better college coaching job than Georgia?
No.
You don't?
No.
I mean, I would say they're at least at the
They've won 2 national titles in a row recently. They have the same amount of NFL talent in the draft.
Alabama's a bigger brand, though.
Right, but
Much bigger brand.
But you make the brand what it is, and UConn is a bigger brand now.
I think UConn might be a bigger brand. Well, I don't know. I mean, I still think like Kentucky can always, you know what though, even though Kentucky hasn't been good lately, Kentucky can always get the best recruits. They can always get the best talent. Look, I think that Dan Hurley could probably create something better with Kentucky. I'm not saying that he could probably do something better with Kentucky than he was able to do in UConn. I mean, look, I would understand if he stays in UConn, but you know what? College basketball coaches and college football coaches leave pretty regularly. And
by the way,
jobs that they think might be better.
Okay. I just want to break into your point, because it's actually about to become a extremely moot point.
Okay.
Because a few hours ago, Kentucky's SB Nation blog reported that Kentucky have reportedly offered Scott Drew, coach at Baylor, the head coaching job.
Really? Is he going to take it?
I would assume, but that says NewJersey.com says they're targeting him, and I also just saw a tweet from another reporter at 24/7 Sports who said Scott Drew has begun to notify staff and players in Waco that he is taking the Kentucky job, and it is possible that he is named within the next 24 hours. So by the time this show airs, we could already know who it is.
Yeah, we could already know. Wow, that's that's pretty crazy. I mean, I don't know. John Calipari he almost seemed to pull a bit of an he almost seems to be going down the same direction as like Urban Meyer.
Mm,
Like there seems to be a bit of a downfall at the like he's a legendary head coach.
right.
He's had a really big program, kind of a legendary downfall in the end. The only
Well,
difference is that he's actually continuing to coach.
but also though, once the kid on Oakland started getting hot from three, though, if he was in the same vein, he would have faked cardiac arrest on the court and had the game stopped.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but it's that's a good comparison.
Yeah, no, I think it seems to be going in that sort of direction. Um, I don't know. It's just weird. Like college basketball is over now. We had our little flash in the pan of college basketball for the past month or so. Uh, now I guess it's all over. I just think it's going to be interesting next year to see how a few things are going to be interesting. The whole Calipari in Arkansas, how successful will he be? Arkansas is one of those sort of how do I say it? They're not like a traditional powerhouse in college basketball. They're not a
Right.
blue blood program, but there are years where they are very good and they do have a chance to be a very good team. Um, yeah,
Well,
and
and the funny thing is that they were actually trending that direction for a long time in football, and then they went to being one of the worst teams in the whole country, and now
yeah,
they're kind of back to being a little bit good. But yeah, they're an interesting program,
I
definitely.
guess it's like that in football and basketball. They occasionally they kind of go very up and down, but like they're not a blue
Right,
blood program, but they
right.
do have a chance to be very good. I wonder, it is just an interesting question to ask. Assuming Scott Drew is going to be the new hire at Kentucky, who's going to win more, Scott Drew or at Kentucky or John Calipari at Arkansas? I don't know if he's going to be able to like sort of revive his reputation because Calipari's reputation right now has been hurt within the past couple of weeks, ever since they lost to Oakland. Uh,
Right.
and
Yes.
yeah, I mean, look, maybe Kentucky, maybe you're right about the whole pushed out thing. Maybe Kentucky just has higher standards for their coaches than other teams do. I don't think like that certainly is possible because I don't think if Calipari was the head coach of St. John's, for instance, he'd be pushed out or Florida or most
Yeah,
college basketball
I
programs.
agree.
And the truth is, college basketball coaches don't get fired as easily as college football coaches do. I think the standard for firing college basketball coaches is a lot higher than it is for college football coaches. Um,
Mhm.
and my reasoning for it probably is that it's just I think that being a college football coach requires more responsibility than being a college basketball coach. It is usually the money, even at schools like Kentucky or Duke that are traditionally considered basketball schools. Football brings in more money, and
Right.
you're in charge of a lot more guys, and I don't know all of these things that in basketball coaches get away with a lot more. It seems like.
Right.
Um, I mean, like if Steve Sarkisian, he was fired when he was having an alcohol problem when he was for being an
Mhm.
alcoholic at
No.
USC. If he was a basketball coach, I feel like there's no way he gets fired
Right.
unless he steps down.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, just sort of an observation. I also wonder with Calipari is he going to do the same thing that he's been doing, the same strategy? Because it seems like it's not working, obviously, or at least not working like it used to. He's great at developing players. He's great at getting the best players. He's great at developing NBA talent. But the thing is, though, is that he's trying to win consistently with 18 and 19-year-olds. Roster
Mm.
is made up entirely of 18 and 19-year-olds with very bright futures in the NBA, which means that occasionally he could strike gold like he did in 2015 with Carl Anthony Towns, Willie Cauley-Stein, and the Harrison twins and all like that whole roster. The problem is that one year he did strike gold with that Kentucky team. He didn't even win. So it is just maybe it could be true that it's just not a good that Calipari's strategy at Kentucky is just not exactly a recipe for success because of how unsustainable it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that every coach at any sport and any level at some point, the way that they coach gets old.
Yeah. I think you could say that about Belichick.
I mean, I think it's just also how life works, though.
Yeah.
I think that, the way of doing things gets old at some point in everything.
Yeah. And I think that's true. On some level, I think that's true. I think that's especially true in sports. I guess Seinfeld couldn't go on for 20 years.
Right. Exactly.
So I guess it's a sort of similar kind of thing. Okay. So there's also a lot going on in the women's game. This is the most popular the women's game has ever been.
Mhm.
I think the women's national championship got more views than the men's.
Yeah. So it got 18.7 million, and that was 18.7 million, by the way, was the most watched game, pro, college, men's or women's basketball game in 5 years. So to put that into perspective, the game 6 of the 2022 NBA Finals between the Golden State Warriors and the Boston Celtics got 16.5. So now, I mean, it's a little bit different because it's a series, but
Yeah.
but still, this was.
What you mean 16.5 per game?
That was what Game 6 got its highest
Game
rating.
6, you said. Okay.
Yeah, the game where they won the title.
Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting. So the women's Final Four is that national championship game was. What were the Final Four numbers? Do you know?
I only know the championship game, but I know that I know the championship game. I don't know what South Carolina got, but Iowa UConn got 14 million.
Okay.
Which is the same. So the men's got 14.7. So the women beat it by 4 million. Now it's worth noting that the women's game was on a Sunday at 3:00 Eastern on ABC, and the men's game was on a Monday at 9:45 p.m. on TBS. So that's a significant difference. But yeah, this was great. Great exposure for the women's game. I think it was a shame, though. I made a video on it on Twitter. I was upset, but I think it was a shame that it was marred by a great game in the Final Four. It was marred, I think, by a ref show call at the end of the game that hurt UConn. Caitlin Clark, while obviously she's a terrific player, I find it hard. I find two things interesting. One is that South Carolina was undefeated. They've lost one game in the last 2 years, and they were not getting anywhere near the coverage of what Caitlin Clark was getting at all. And I know that Caitlin Clark's a spectacular player, but I just found that interesting. I don't think more people probably knew about Caitlin Clark than knew that South Carolina was undefeated and they were just a wagon. But the second thing is I don't understand anybody who says, and you can admit that Caitlin Clark is a terrific player and still understand and watch and understand that the games when she's playing are reffed very favorably toward Iowa. I mean, I don't think that's a out there take. I see that a lot of people are saying, oh, that's, don't say that it's rigged toward Iowa. She's coached. She's reffed differently. I mean, if you watch the games, that's the fact of the matter. That video of her throwing the South Carolina girl to the ground and then hitting the three, that would have been an offensive foul on probably any other player in the country. I find that also, while she's been great, I also don't understand the crowd that doesn't think that there's any differentiating in refereeing.
I will say I can't answer. I don't watch enough women's basketball to really know if that's true or not when it comes to the reffing. I will have to say I don't agree with you on this. I think it was the right call. It was a foul.
But it's 9 seconds left. First of all,
what's the difference? Hold on.
First of all, how often do they call a sliding screen ever in a game. And two, it's the moment of the thing. Same thing with what happened in the Super Bowl with the Eagles and the Chiefs. It's in the moment. You have to. I think that you have to let a lot more go. And just like it's somebody going 47 and a 45 is going over the speed limit technically, right? So technically, okay, maybe she was sliding. I still think that's up for interpretation, but I think that a little foul like this, put it this way, if they don't call it and Paige Beckers hits a 3 and UConn win, would there have been an outcry about the call? No, because nobody really noticed it. It was a tiny infraction. Maybe it was a foul, maybe, but in the moment when you've got an all-time Final Four for the women's game, you've got the most eyes on you, 9 seconds in an unbelievably terrific game, which, by the way, UConn were up 12 in the game, and the game started to be reffed a little bit differently once UConn went up 12. And then UConn went down 11 and came back, and it was an unbelievable game. And to call a moving screen in that moment when it was not, she slid her feet. The girl flopped. I mean, whether you think it was a foul or not, the girl sold it. But I just think that was complete and utter ref show at the moment. And I don't think that I understand that you're saying it's the right call, but there's nobody that wants the game to be decided by referees. And that was not, whether you think it's the right call or not, that was not blatant. It was not a blatant foul.
Well, okay. Well, a few things you just said there. First of all, I don't think it matters what the gravity of the moment is. The game should be reffed consistently, no matter what. Like a holding call, or like if a player is holding in football, it is holding. You said that people wouldn't notice. Okay, that's probably true, but I don't think it matters. Like whether or not people would notice something has nothing to do with whether or not it's the right call. The right call is the right call. It doesn't matter how the public would likely feel about it. And it doesn't matter if the ref, look, I didn't watch all of that game. I couldn't watch all of that game, so I don't know how all of that game went. But look, if you would call that 5 minutes into the game, then you should call it 5 seconds away from the game. It doesn't matter if there's a holding call, if an offensive lineman is holding on the, say, I don't know, the like a potentially game-winning 2-point conversion that wins one team the game or whatever, you still call it if it's holding. That's it. You call it. Like if it is a foul that you would call 5 seconds, whether it's the first quarter, third quarter, second quarter, the game should be reffed the same all the way through until the clock hits 0. Like if it would have been a foul 5 seconds into the game, it's a foul if there's 5 seconds left in the game. It's not the ref deciding the game if it happens with 5 seconds left any more than it's the ref deciding the game if this had happened 5 seconds into the game. And theoretically, that could also decide the game. I mean, the only honest answer is the girl shouldn't have fouled. That's the only honest answer, because I don't know, like maybe people wouldn't have noticed, but I don't see why it matters. If it's a foul, it's a foul. And that's the right call. Like, I don't think the ref should swallow their risk. It should just purposely turn a blind eye to an actual foul just because it's a big spot.
Well, but again, yes, I know. I think it completely changes it, and you could. I mean, again, it was ticky tack. Whether you want it, that was a ticky tack, a moving screen. I mean, professional basketball, I understand it's different, but professional basketball, I don't think they've called a moving screen in about 15 years. It's it's really ticky tack, and you could call so much stuff. I mean, you have to. But again, like one of the great moments in NBA history was Jordan's Game 6 winner against Utah. That was an offensive foul.
They should have called it.
But I'm saying all these years later, you're thinking about, okay, this was a great moment. That was an offensive foul. They pushed the guy off, but it was, I just think that yes, the moment has to be considered. Don't you like? I think that everybody agrees postseason should always be reffed a little bit more liberally.
I wouldn't say it should be. I'm saying it always is. I would say the difference is that I think that there's a difference between like the postseason, where if there is a borderline call, they're less likely to call it or whatever. That's true. The difference is I don't think it should be ref differently at the end of the at different points in the same game, as opposed to like the postseason versus the regular season. I think there's a bit of a difference in scale between those two things.
Right. But yeah, but come on. I mean, I just thought this was not the moment to
what, make the right call?
No, it's not a right call, but it's a very ticky tack call. This is not. She didn't throw it to the ground. There wasn't. Come on now. This was she was sliding her feet on it. It was not. It was very close to even being considered a foul at all. And come on, this was. But the fact that also the game is refed completely differently is with Iowa is just a fact that you could see on in the numbers. I mean, UConn was called for 18 fouls. Iowa was called for 9. The game against West Virginia, they shot 25 free throws. West Virginia shot 2. This game against South Carolina was called for a lot more fouls. I mean, the attraction of her certainly has to do with the way games are reffed. And now I don't agree that games are being rigged. I think that rigged is the wrong word, but absolutely in every sport, at every level, star players are reffed differently. I mean, that's a undeniable fact. Tom Brady was reffed differently. Mahomes is reffed differently. LeBron is reffed differently. Sidney Crosby is reffed differently. The only sport where you don't have it, because it's really hard to do, is baseball. But besides that, in those major sports, they're reffed differently. I mean, that's I think that's something.
I don't disagree with that last point. That part is true. I think some quarterbacks are ref differently than others. I mean, you can't when Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, or whoever the star player. I mean, roughing the passers, you can get away with a lot more against some quarterbacks than others. You can get away with a lot more against Zach Wilson most of the time than Tom Brady. If you breathed on Tom Brady the wrong way, they would call it roughing the passer. But the thing is I don't entirely disagree with that. I'm not confirming or denying, because I haven't watched enough to really say I know that that's true or not when it comes to Caitlin Clark. But that really had nothing to do with my general point, which was I think they should call my view is they should ref everything the same, everybody the same. And my view is that it shouldn't matter what game it is, what point in the game it is. It should all be consistent. Like if there is a right or wrong call, I think they should make that right or wrong call. I don't care if it takes away a huge moment. I don't care if it takes away something historic. My view is they should just do it the same. That's all I've ever thought. I don't know if you have anything more to add about this.
We disagree that moments are different. That moments should be ref differently. I think, yeah.
Okay. So I mean, Caitlin Clark, she's gonna. I mean, this has nothing to do with what we were just talking about, but she has single-handedly, and this is just objectively true. Now, this has nothing to do with how she should be reffed or anything. I'm just saying in general, she has almost single-handedly made women's basketball more popular. Like she brought it on the map. Like women's basketball used to be a complete joke. No more than 4 or 5 years ago. There was just the thought of women's college basketball being this popular. She single-handedly brought them onto the map, almost single-handedly.
Yeah. I think a lot of things went into it, but yeah, I agree that she's certainly transcended it, definitely. But I think that also she's she's a little bit overrated, but yeah, I agree that she's completely transcended at some points.
I mean, I mean, she's probably going to end up playing in the Big Three league at some point and make like, I think $5 million, $10 million or something like that. I don't know if you saw that she got
I didn't even know that even existed anymore.
the Ice Cube's Big Three league.
I know what it is. I didn't even know it existed anymore.
Yeah, I mean, well, Caitlin Clark, she put up like she put up 30. I mean, she individually was far more significant than anybody else on either team. I mean, like, I'm not saying like, look, sometimes the literal.
Did you watch the game?
Yeah, some of it.
Okay, she was the 30 points is you're talking about in the final?
Yeah.
It was misleading. She was clamped down. Raven Johnson defended her. She scored 18 in the first quarter, and they moved Raven Johnson onto her, and Raven Johnson completely clamped her down. But she was a non-factor, Caitlin Clark, in the second half, a complete non-factor in the second half. And Cardoza and Tessa Thompson also had great games for South Carolina, but South Carolina was way too much of a team. First of all, they outscored them on the bench 38 to nothing.
Well, first of all, South Carolina was a much better, like, I don't think anybody who followed this at all would think that Iowa was a better team than South Carolina. South Carolina.
Well, I think they would, because I think that South Carolina got no credit.
Well, no, I'm saying anybody who's followed it, who actually followed it at all. I don't mean like your average random person who doesn't actually watch it.
So South Carolina beat them 37-0 on bench points, close to impossible to win when you're outscored by 40 by the other bench. And they also out-rebounded them 51-29, also close to impossible to win a game when you're doubled up in rebounds. South Carolina is an absolute wagon, and just as same shout out to Danny Hurley has done a great job. Dawn Staley's done an unbelievable job at South Carolina, and even though South Carolina was undefeated and they have won the title 2 out of 3 years, and they should have won it 3 years in a row. So what I'm gonna say is sounds stupid, but the parity in women's basketball has also gotten a lot better. It really used to be UConn, and then it was UConn and Baylor sometimes, but the parity has gotten a lot better as well. So that, I thought it was, I think it was a great year for the game, and I think it'll probably continue. One of the very few, maybe the only sport where the college is more popular than pros.
Yeah, probably. Probably, which is, although it's not saying much, because.
By the way, the insanity of women's basketball, you know when the WNBA draft is?
No.
On Monday.
On what channel?
I think it's on ESPN, but they literally, like, they're playing this season. Like, Caitlin Clark's gonna play in like 3 weeks for the Indiana Fever. Yeah, she's gonna. The season starts in like June.
So the WNBA season starts in June.
I think it's maybe starts even earlier than that. It tends to start right as the NBA finals are ending. But like the college players that are just played are playing this season.
When is the draft going to happen?
On Monday.
Oh, this Monday.
Yeah.
Wow. So I don't know if I'm going to watch. Well, here's what I'll say. It's certainly more popular than the baseball draft.
Yes.
The baseball draft is nothing.
Well, also, guys that are drafted this year in baseball won't play in this decade. So
yeah, that's very likely true in a lot of cases. So
isn't baseball I think also baseball, like no one really ever, like, I don't know about no one, but most guys don't even play for the team that initially drafted them, right? Like they guys get traded around crazy.
Yeah, they get traded around. Yeah, Michael Conforto did.
The life of, like, if you've ever seen like stories, I wouldn't wish being a minor league baseball player my worst enemy.
Yeah,
like, the life they live, that's horrible.
No, that is an interesting point. I think that baseball is just, if you're as a player, it's just such a grind. I think that it is just a harder path, it seems like, to just whereas like in basketball, if you're a star player at Kentucky, Duke, wherever, you go right to the NBA. or maybe a G League team.
Right.
In baseball, you have to go through single A, double A, triple A. I think that's part of the reason why so many Americans are choosing to play football or basketball
Right.
rather than baseball, and why so many baseball players, I think, come from, say, third world and developing countries.
Yeah.
They're kind of willing to put up. I think that people from, say, third world and developing countries are much more willing to put up with crap like that. Whereas American guys are more likely to want to, have a more instant path to an easier path to stardom, per se.
Right.
And,
Right.
yeah. I also think, by the way, it is way harder to be an MLB GM and deal with prospects than in football or basketball. Football and basketball, it's like we all know all about so many of these guys. In baseball, it's like you got to go a lot of times you're
Right.
scouting teenagers, and
Right.
you could have a list of players you don't even know if these guys exist. Like it could be like it is just a crazy thing. There just seems to be such like a grind with baseball.
Right.
So I do want to talk a little bit about the NBA playoff picture a little bit. I think that now the Knicks feel pretty safe from a playing game. It's not a guarantee, but right now the Knicks are the 3 seed. By the time the show comes out, that might change. It looks like they very likely will be a 3 seed. I feel like the only team that I truly think, the only 2 teams, I think they're the 2 teams right now that I think truly are better than the Knicks are the Bucks and the Celtics, obviously. But I think that they should be safe from having to play a play-in game. If they're the 3 seed, that means they play. If the season ended today, that means they play the Pacers in the first round. If anything, I'm just worried about the Sixers now they have Embiid back.
Right.
I,
Which
I,
is
I feel safe so far.
so that's a problem. So as we're currently taping this is going to be so irrelevant because by Friday this will all be changed. But the Knicks are 1 game out of the 2 seed, a game ahead of the 4 and 5, and 2.5 away from the play-in. But like you said, the Sixers are lurking with Embiid back. They're 1 game behind Indiana. I don't want to play them. But I do think that the Milwaukee now also, as we were taping this, may have just suffered a catastrophe as well.
Yeah.
Now, if Milwaukee has suffered a catastrophe, the Knicks are 1 game back of Milwaukee. And I don't know if you want that 2 seed because right now it's possible that the 7 seed would be either Philly or Miami. I would rather play Indiana than either Philly or Miami. But Milwaukee has possibly suffered a catastrophe, which is, to me, I thought that a few days ago that the Knicks' hopes of making an Eastern Conference Finals, which I think is the ceiling that a lot of people had this year. We went to the second round last year. Were dashed when Julius Randle was confirmed out for the year. Which I think a few things about that. But for right now, if Milwaukee has suffered, if Giannis had what looked like a bad injury, he was inbounding the ball, he starts to run up the court, and he just falls and holds his Achilles. Nobody near him, which is the worst possible way to get an injury. Nobody near him. And so that's possibly a big injury for them. I agree that I think that Milwaukee, even though I think the Knicks are better than Milwaukee, if they had Julius Randle, I think they would definitely be better than Milwaukee. But I think that Milwaukee has something going on internally. I mean, I think they were 27 and what were they? 27 and 10, 32 and they were like 32 and 12 or something something like that. When Adrian Griffin got fired, they're 48 and 31 now. They're 14. Yes, they're the 2 seed. They're 14 back of the 1 seed. I think that they have some internal issues that I think are bigger than possibly just what's going on the court. I think that the Knicks are better than Orlando. I think they're better than Indiana. Cleveland, I think, could go either way. Miami, I'm scared of, and I'm extremely scared of Joel Embiid if he's back to healthy. They are a scary team. They are a scary team, and the Celtics' reward for being the best team in basketball all year is possibly to face the Sixers in the first round.
Yeah,
That
that's crazy to think about.
that would be some series, and I think that Philly is better than they were last year. I think Maxi's better, and I think you've got a full strength Joel Embiid. They're a dangerous team, and they're a team that fell out of people's minds because of the Joel Embiid injury. But Joel Embiid was the runaway MVP before he got injured, and if he's back to that level, I wouldn't want to face him in a series at all.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Also, I mean, you do bring up an interesting. You do bring up a good point, an interesting point that I didn't think about, which is that the Celtics might have to face the Sixers in the first round, and possibly the second round if if the Celtic. I mean, even in that scenario. The interesting thing about that is, even though the Celtics are the team to beat in the East right now, and they've already clinched the best record in the NBA, the Celtics. But it wouldn't exactly shock me. It wouldn't be uncharacteristic of the Celtics, especially in recent years, if they were to just lose in the first round after a season like this. I mean, they are known. Like, look, they are known for choking in a lot of really big spots, and it wouldn't be the most shocking thing to me if something like that were to happen.
Well, and so their options right now, unless Indiana falls down, would be to play Philly, who we just talked about, or to play Miami, who eliminated them last year.
Yeah.
So I think that Knicks, Orlando, Cleveland, and Indiana would all have been a better matchup for them in the first round than the two teams that are one of them will be the 8th seed.
Yeah. Although this year, I think but you also, like you said Miami. You said like the Sixers are better this year than they were last year. The Celtics are also better than they were last year.
Yeah.
The one thing with the Celtics this year is that they're almost unbeatable at home.
Yes. But again,
if they have home court, it is going to be very hard to beat them.
Well, they will have home court if they have.
That's what I'm saying. As long as they have home court, which they will in every series,
yeah,
it's going to be very hard to beat them.
Yes, I agree.
But you just never know. I mean, sometimes some players just become a shell of themselves when the playoffs come around.
Correct, and Embiid is actually a good playoff performer. He just had injury, and then he had Ben Simmons as a partner. But I think the Celtics and Sixers always play tough series.
Yeah,
in games, and it feels like Philly and Boston are starting a little bit of a rivalry too. But like you said, they're the same thing except Boston actually wins. I think it's going to be. I mean, I will say this: I think that we're going to be in for a very exciting playoffs.
Yeah, I hope so.
Especially in the West. I think the West is going to be electric.
I think the West is much more interesting than the East right now because it's totally wide open. I feel like anybody can make a run.
So right now, it would be Minnesota versus. Right now, there would be one of the play-ins. The elimination play-in would be. Now, this could also change because all these teams are jumbled. The elimination playing game would be Lakers versus Warriors. Then the 7 or 8 would be. So let's say that both those teams are eliminated at some point. The matchups would be Minnesota versus Sacramento, Denver versus Phoenix, Oklahoma City versus New Orleans, and the Clippers versus the Mavericks.
Yeah,
I mean that's as good a first round as you'll ever find.
Yeah. Also, it's also interesting because the two teams that, if the season ended today, would be in the elimination play-in game. Either of those teams could make a run and win and end up making the finals. And possibly even winning it all. I mean, like I think the Lakers could end up. I mean, look, last year the Lakers were better, but keep in mind the Lakers last year were also a play-in team, and they ended up better. They weren't able to beat the Nuggets because the Nuggets last year were just that good.
Right.
I don't think anybody could have beaten the Nuggets, but the Lakers really punched above their weight last year. And that's why I think that, like, in the East, I think that it's sort of like it's much more the haves and the have-nots, or the Celtics and the Sixers and then everybody else. But in the West, I feel like all of these, like you said, all these teams are jumbled. And I think that, anybody can kind of make a run.
I don't, and just to your point, I don't care how old he is. I don't care who's around him. I never want to see LeBron in a playoff series if I'm another team, ever.
No, you never do. Like, people always say, Skip Bayless used to always say he has no clutch gene. That's just not true. I don't think you can make that claim anymore.
Correct.
About LeBron is just too good in the playoffs. And I think that, he just has, I think that, we live in an age of load management and star players taking off and things like that, which is why I think the regular season sometimes looks so much different from the postseason. And, a team that's a little bit above average in the postseason could be the best team in the conference when the playoffs come around.
Yeah, I agree.
But who's really going to carry the Knicks this year, I think, is going to be not Jalen Brunson, but Quentin Grimes. I think Quentin Grimes is really going to make a difference this year, even though he's not on the Knicks anymore.
Correct. So Stephen A. Smith said that he was talking about the Knicks beating Milwaukee on Sunday, and he said he's been watching Grimes, and Grimes looks really good. Now, to Stephen A. Smith's credit, he did tweet back and say that he meant to say Deuce McBride is who he was actually talking about. But I think that it's been known that Stephen A. is kind of a fraud. Doesn't actually watch the games, correct?
I've heard that. It is kind of weird that you would say that you would confuse Quentin Grimes with Deuce McBride.
Right.
Those names aren't really all that similar. I feel like Grimes and McBride.
Yeah. Yeah. But this is also not the first time. That he's had this mess up.
Yeah.
And we obviously, the Hunter Henry one was the biggest one, but he's had a lot of issues like that.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny. I think his issue is that he just works too much.
Yeah, that's true.
He just works too much. He talks so much that he just forgets everything.
Well, also, I mean, the funniest part of the whole thing is that the only reason the clip was out there is he actually uploaded it onto his own YouTube channel.
Right. Don't you think that you would be like, oh, I said Quentin Grimes instead of Deuce McBride? Like,
somebody who originally tweeted out said if the producer tells Stephen A. to talk about the Jets, he'd go, I'm looking at Geno Smith. He looked good.
Yeah. Oh man, that's too funny. So we had an earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
We have to talk. Yeah, we do have to talk about this earthquake. I feel bad about this because I missed out. I overslept. I slept through the whole thing. I don't know if you felt
both of them. There were two.
Well, one was an aftershock, wasn't it?
No, I think there were two different ones, but it was actually much closer to you. So it was in the Ramapo fault line where we had this earthquake. I also was sleeping, but I did not. I was awake during the second one. I did not feel the second one, but I have experienced an earthquake in Arizona. I was just sitting there and stuff just shook for a minute and then it went on, which is sort of what happened here. It was a 4.8, which they call in California just a regular Tuesday. But it was insane because you would never expect it to happen. I mean, nobody thinks about New York being on the tectonic plates, and it actually, I think it was the entire Northeast felt it. I know Philly and Boston felt it as well. But it was an insane, like, I thought two things. I thought, one, it was insane that it happened. And then two, I thought it was insane that, like, the governor and mayor were on TV for a kind of small shake. There wasn't any injuries, thank God. But there was, possibilities of, stuff stuff that we were saved from. I mean, a guy called into the Michael K show and said that he works for a big chemical company, and they're in Fairfield, New Jersey, and they're like racks of chemicals and stuff were shaking violently, which if that fell, that could have been very bad. Certainly things could have been a lot worse, but I think it was so unexpected. And then also
All earthquakes are.
well, I know, but especially in New
Yeah,
York,
especially this one.
I mean, nobody really expects that. But I think that the best part was the jokes on the internet were hysterical afterwards, and it also just shows you that no matter what happens in the world, the internet is never going to take anything seriously.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. I remember. Yeah, I saw something that said if the world ended, or if a meteor hit Earth, they would show like Earth with like the Jordan cry face.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was the best part. But yeah, it was insane. I mean, did like were people that were in your house and stuff, did they feel it?
I don't think there was anybody in my house at the time,
Okay.
so I don't think so. But all I know is that I slept through it, which I don't know. Like, I don't think any earthquake that we get around here would be enough to wake somebody up.
No, I mean, the crazy thing about earthquakes is too, like the aftershocks could be like hours later, like after.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't have like any earthquake training or anything know what to do. But yeah, I mean, it could have been way worse. But you just think about like how crazy that even is, and it's really like who like you literally is the one thing I don't understand is like they have all these like experts on the earthquakes and stuff, but they can't predict it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
a
true.
little bit.
The interesting, well, I guess when we get earthquakes here, it's kind of like if there's 2 inches of snow in the South.
Right.
Like society, like people in down south don't know how to handle a little bit of like flurries of snow.
Right.
It's the same thing here. I mean, like people like California look at us like, are you kidding me? There was just it's
Also,
like a 4.8.
the emergency alerts went off like 5 hours after. Like
Yeah,
the emergency alerts were extremely late.
yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
the Northeast is not known for this.
if they had, I mean, if they had those same emergency alerts on 9/11, they would have went off at like 8:30 at night. I
Yeah,
mean, it was like it was like 10 hours later. It was insane. But you had, I mean, what like a week where you had earthquakes, eclipses. I mean, just an insane week.
and not too long after the bridge collapse and all.
The bridge collapse. There was, yeah. I mean, and there was actually a devastating earthquake in Taiwan the day before. There was 7.2
Yeah,
in Taiwan. But so it was a little different. But yeah, and the bridge collapsing and a cargo ship actually hit into or did you see that the Verrazano Bridge? There was a cargo ship that almost did the same thing that happened in Baltimore. It also lost power and power steering and stuff like that as it was going under the
did it
bridge.
actually hit the bridge?
I'm not sure. It's really high though, the Verrazano Bridge. But I mean, also says a lot about the infrastructure of this country when the bridge, like the ship banged into the bridge and it literally just like folded.
Yeah. Well, a lot of bridges I know have designs so that if a bridge, I don't know which bridges exactly, but there are some bridges that are designed to resist that. So, like, if a boat were to hit it, the whole
Right.
thing, like, it wouldn't hit it right on because there's a big buffer zone. Uh,
Right.
which a lot of, I mean, which I don't know how fast the boat was going, but it couldn't have been going that fast.
No, I think it was well. I will. The good thing that happened, and it's a shame. You know, it's still a tragedy because people died. But the boat put out the signal that they didn't have any power or anything, and the first responders in Baltimore were able to shut down the bridge
Yeah.
before it happened because that could have been a very bad situation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the it was an insane video to watch. Like
Yeah.
the thing just collapsing like that. So yeah, it's
Everybody's like, there are some people who have very irrational fears of bridges collapsing every time they're on it. That's like one thing that sort of vindicated their fear. Like, you see, that's why I won't go over a bridge.
Right. Even though, like, yeah, same thing. Like, that happens a lot with like people who are scared of flying. Like, there'll be a plane crash, and it's like, well, there were actually 10 million things. But it was an insane week, and the eclipse, which, by the way, I don't know if you're with me on this. The eclipse, I'm on the way overrated train on the eclipse.
I agree. I think it was not just overrated, but a bust. It was this was like the Zach Wilson of eclipses.
Also, I looked at it. Now it looked cool. Like, if you looked at like Cleveland and Buffalo and places that were in direct sight, it did get dark, but I thought it was overrated. Also, what was very funny is like this was extremely dangerous thing to look at, and people were kind of just trusting these like $5 glasses that they got at like something, like just looking up and going in. Like, you literally, like, the amount of people that would have went blind. There was a lot of like NBA players. Like, I remember Josh Hart and Trae Young tweeted like, "Do you really need the glasses?" I was like, "We're about to lose half the league in one day."
Yeah. Well, the thing is I had to get up to watch it, and I saw it. I was like, "This isn't that good." Then I went back to bed because the next one's not for another 20 years, right?
Yeah, but that's the other thing. Like, they're saying like, "Oh, it's." Like, I feel like people were like buying hotel rooms and stuff like this. It also just happened a few years ago as well.
It happened 7 years ago, which is not that long ago. It was not even 7 years ago.
But I just found it funny that people were like, "Do you really need the glasses? You're still staring at the sun, no matter what." Like, yes, you need to wear glasses. You're staring.
It's much brighter than the sun. Imagine literally staring at, like, for how many seconds can you stare at the sun without looking away?
Right, probably not very,
not much,
not many, because your body actually makes you do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I mean, earthquakes, eclipses. It's like literally like been a movie this week.
Yeah, it's been. Yeah. Well, yeah. It definitely has been with all the eclipse. My question is, how do they know when the eclipse is gonna?
They know it for hundreds of years too. It's, I think, just the way the Earth turns. But by the way, I want to talk about that real quick. They've known for hundreds of years. They had to. So I don't know if you saw this, but they actually moved the Yankee game time. The Yankees were supposed to play the Marlins at 2 p.m. and they moved the game at 6 to 6 o'clock because of the eclipse. But they knew the eclipse was going to happen for 100 years. Like, why did they schedule the game at 2 o'clock if they knew the eclipse was going to happen?
Do you think that the MLB knew?
Yeah, everyone. Well, it's a known thing that there was going to be an eclipse on this day. But if it was that big a deal, I would have preferred them to have just played in the glasses.
That would have been funny.
That would have been electric if they had just played in the glasses. But yeah, I mean that's like that's like something they could have fixed up. Now, the Yankees are the biggest scam artists of all time, by the way. They'll always rain out a game like after an hour rain delay, even though it's pouring, because people will buy will park and buy food and stuff in the stadium. They're such scam artists when they do stuff like that. But yeah, I thought that was crazy that they moved the game. They moved the game back, even though they knew about it for months, or years. But yeah, insane week.
Yeah. All right. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. You can catch us every Friday night at 8 o'clock. This was Moving the Goalpost. You can subscribe to the Empty the Bench Network on YouTube at ETB, youtube.com/ETB Network. You can follow us on social media at MTGP ETB, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And you can follow me on follow Empty the Bench on social media at ETB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMartino, Liam at Liam MTGP. And all right, that was our show. We'll be back. We'll be back next Friday at 8 o'clock.